All right, so this is Lake Cushman, and that way is the staircase. Mark Gilbert Gilman came up this trail, and he never came back. Guy Zach Cruel came up the same trail. Young fella about 20 years old. Hiked up those mountains and never came back. We're going to go to where it all started. For the millions of people who visit the Olympic National Park every year, most are unaware the Olympic Mountains and the surrounding area contain a deep, dark secret. The temptation to succumb to the thrill of the mountains, streams, rivers, and valleys, and leave all caution behind can be a deadly mistake. Yet for far too many people, the Olympic Mountains have been the last place they were seen alive, if they were ever seen again. From Lake Quinault in the west and the Salduck Hot Springs in the north, to Lake Cushman and the Staircase Trails in the east, the Olympic National Park has claimed a range of victims in the last 30 years, and more likely than not will continue to claim victims as long as the Olympic Mountains decorate the Pacific Northwest skyline like a pearl necklace covering opulent blue and azure peaks reaching to the Olympic sky and beckoning the adventurer and lover of nature alike. What a person who spends time outdoors understands more than a person who does not is the sheer vulnerability a human being has in the realm of raw nature. Devoid of firearms, humans are no longer apex predators dominating the top of the natural food chain. In the Olympic Mountains, a number of aggressive black bear and mountain lions hunt for food, while elk and other wildlife such as deer will become aggressive when protecting their young. These are very real hazards to the Olympic National Park visitor. In addition, the weather and the terrain are going to cause risks to hikers and adventurers, and any combination of weather, terrain, lack of water, food or shelter, wildlife, and other unknowns are going to send the risk factors of an Olympic mountain adventure soaring through the roofs. According to the National Park Service website, enormous trunks reach for the sky, lacy limbs stretch to the sun. Grooved bark is sanctuary to tiny creatures in the vast cathedral of Douglas firs that dominate the forests on this side of the Olympic Peninsula. Staircase is located in the southeastern corner of Olympic National Park, about 1 hour drive from Olympia and 2 hours south of Port Angeles. A variety of hiking trails navigate through the Staircase area along the Skokomish River and the nearby forests. There are several short-day hikes that explore the area. Shady Lane Trail is flat and less than a mile to Lake Cushman. The hike to Flapjack Lakes is for stronger hikers, gaining over 3,000 feet in elevation. Longer hikes like the North Fork Skokomish River Trail can be done in a couple of days. Truly, the United States National Park Service does make an outing to Lake Cushman and the Staircase Trail in the Olympic Mountains a veritable walk in the park. The question is, what else is lurking in the mountains or the skies, the river valleys or the majestic peaks that takes living toll on the lives of those who venture here? The National Park Service is not telling you about. What else is lurking in this land of mist and mystery that makes some of its human tragedies disappear from the face of the earth, never to be found again? This is the Staircase Ranger Station. It was here on June 24th, 2006, that Gilbert Mark Gilman, ex-paratrooper like myself, drove past the ranger who was standing right here. And she told him, "Hey, buddy," him in his hot rod convertible, "you need to turn down your music." And so he went and drove up the road here. So it was from this very parking lot, Gilbert Mark Gilman, merely 47 years old, all the promise in the world ahead of him, got out of his car right over there. And then he headed that way to the trail that would lead him to his final fate and destiny. Three prevalent theories as to what happened to Gilbert Gilman and why he tragically disappeared from the face of the earth. Theory 1. Israel Keys. Thanks to a TV show about the very subject, there are many who firmly believe Gilbert Gilman was murdered by a serial killer named Israel Keys while Keys was living on the other side of the Olympic Peninsula in a small town called Nia Bay. According to the theory, Keys had purchased overnight permits for the Lake Ozette area 2 years in a row, and which pointed to evidence some investigators theorize that Israel Keys was responsible for Gilbert Gilman's disappearance. In fact, scrutinize the evidence and the different version of the story of Gilbert Gilman's disappearance. There is ample evidence that something strange is going on, and there is some more evidence supporting the theory that Israel Keys murdered Gilbert Gilman. Was it possible for Israel Keys to travel from Nia Bay to Lake Cushman to find Gilbert Gilman and commit murder? On a summer day like June 24th, considering tourist traffic, the trip from Nia Bay to Hoodsport and then up the mountain road to Lake Cushman and then the staircase trail to intercept Gil Gilman would require anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. Considering tourist traffic, the trip from Nia Bay to Hoodsport and then up the mountain road to Lake Cushman and then the staircase trail to intercept Gil Gilman would require anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. So yes, it would have been possible. Was Keys physically capable of killing Gilbert Gilman? According to StrangeOutdoors.com, Gilman was a tough and super intelligent guy, an ex-U.S. Army paratrooper who had served military duty in Panama, East Africa, and Israel. He had combat experience with the 82nd Airborne and received 2 Bronze Stars. He formerly worked as a military interrogator in Iraq and took assignments in counterterrorism and counterintelligence. He also worked as a civilian contractor for a year in Iraq and was fluent in Arabic, Russian, and Chinese. And what about Keys? He also had some specialized military training himself. On July 9th, 1998, Keys relocated and enlisted in the United States Army in the state of New York, where he served as a specialist in Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 5th Infantry of the 25th Infantry Division. Keys passed a month-long preliminary course for the United States Army Rangers. He was stationed at Fort Lewis and Fort Hood. He also spent some time abroad. In fact, he was stationed in the Sinai, where Keys befriended several soldiers, informing one of them that he would like to kill him. Having competed in the Port Angeles Marathon just the week before the disappearance of Gilbert Gilman, is evidence, advocates point out, that Keys was responsible for the death and disappearance of Gilbert Gilman. According to StrangeOutdoors.com, despite the survival skills he honed in the military, Gilman arrived on the ill-fated hike without any supplies. He was described as healthy and athletic, but he was nearly blind without his glasses. Is it completely realistic to believe Israel Keyes killed Gilbert Gilman on June 24th? The simple answer is Israel Keyes was indeed a violent lunatic who thrived on the suffering of others and showed no mercy to his victims. Let's face it, he was nuttier than a fruitcake on Christmas, and were he to be named as a suspect in the disappearance, there are few people who would come forward and act as if they're surprised. However, there are a few holes in the Israel Keyes theory. First, according to the FBI, Keyes is not a suspect in the Gilbert Gilman disappearance, and the FBI has repeated that statement on a number of occasions. However, there are two reasons that I suspect would leave open a little bit of doubt as to the true identity of Gilman's killer and whether there was something even more mysterious afoot. In the Keyes file available online, Gilbert Gilman's mother, Doris Gilman, asks the FBI if they have any information on her son's disappearance after a story came out that Keyes might be a suspect. Of further interest is the fact that Maureen Callahan reports part of Keyes' FBI file was not released due to claimed national security concerns. So will we ever know if Israel Keyes killed Gilbert Gilman? We won't ever find out from Keyes himself because he died by suicide in his jail in Anchorage, Alaska in 2012. And yes, there is yet another theory about the disappearance of Gilbert Mark Gilman that doesn't involve a psychotic human being this world can definitely do without. The second theory surfaces in the second part of the FBI file on Israel Keyes. The file clearly states the FBI had taken information from Doris Gilman, who firmly believed another quite plausible theory. The theory that Gilbert Mark Gilman disappeared in order to become, as Bob Dylan might say, a complete unknown. One of the prerequisites for the field in which Gilbert Gilman had been involved during his military assignments, that of intelligence and counterintelligence. With so many mysteries culminating ultimately into the Gilbert Gilman missing persons case, thanks to Keyes' history as a first-rate nut job and Gilman's military and counterintelligence background, whether or not Israel Keyes was involved, there's the very real chance that Gilbert Mark Gilman and the intelligence community had merely been sheep-dipping him into a counterintelligence role by killing off his known identity and altering his past and present enough to let him be someone else in the future. If Gilbert Mark Gilman faked his own disappearance, he fooled the one person who still believed he was alive into the heartbreaking task of having him declared legally deceased. All things considered, all things are still possible when it comes to the disappearance of Gilbert Gilman.
Now the hike I'm doing is about a mile, one way. And this is the hike that I assume Mark Gilman was trying to attempt. But somehow this ex-82nd Airborne paratrooper, combat veteran, major, interpreter, speaker of so many languages, somehow just disappeared here. How do you explain that? Now, Mark Gilman set out on this very journey, dressed similarly to how I am. Flip-flops, Hawaiian shirt, loud Hawaiian shirt. Mark also had something else on him. He had confidence. He is ex-82nd Airborne, major, interpreter, has been all over the world, done a lot of things, seen combat. So one thing that he had with him today was maybe confidence, or maybe it could possibly be that Mark Gilman had what the Greeks called hubris. Come on, with all the things that he had been and done, I mean, he was very confident about himself, I'm sure. So taking a mile-long trip up this fairly easy trail, he must have been thinking, hey, nothing can happen to me today. After all I've been through, I'm just going to take a walk on a trail in my flip-flops and my loud Hawaiian t-shirt. So who got him? The fashion police? Well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe there was something else waiting for Mark Gilman in the woods here, and it wasn't something that we would normally suspect.
The thing is, if Gilman were to be the only one who disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances in the national park, we wouldn't have to bring up a local reality and what many would prefer to be kept secret. But at what cost? Gilbert Gilman was not the only one who disappeared and was later found in the Olympic Mountains under questionable circumstances. Considering in most cases the missing or deceased are considered above average in health and in backcountry experience, there is a suspect that no one wants to talk about or consider. There is a suspect that no one wants to think about because it lies beyond the realm of what is plausible. However, like it or not, we're going to see there is another suspect or suspects who people have seen in the area and who would be perfectly capable of picking up full-grown human beings, incapacitating them in one way or another, and then taking them far away to be found in a very different location, in many ways making it impossible to find the remains or to find the remains years later after searching in completely different locations from where they initially disappeared. In spite of the theories as to what happened to Gilbert Mark Gilman on June 24th, 2006, one thing still remains true. He disappeared, and no one knows for sure what happened to him. With all possibilities still open, there's yet a third possibility that exists on the border of what is known and what is not known. That third possibility, that third suspect who may have been responsible for not only Gilbert Mark Gilman's disappearance, but possibly for the many disappearances, deaths, and mysteries that surround the Olympic Mountains.
Oh, one more thing. Before we get too far, let me remind you that it's up this very hill that the head of the Olympic project, a project dedicated to one thing, and that is the search for Sasquatch, on this trail is where he had large boulders thrown at him. He told me this back in 2019.
It was during one of these trips when I had my first encounter. In 1985, I was 20 years old.
From the early days when I first started out looking into the subject of Bigfoot and aliens near my hometown in the Pacific Northwest, I found you could not talk about Bigfoot in the Olympics without talking about Bigfoot near Lake Cushman. When you are looking at suspects for the disappearance or violent demise of apparently healthy, fit individuals in the area of Lake Cushman and the Olympic Mountains, to paraphrase Derek Randall's, these people aren't out to prove Bigfoot exists. They know that.
There's a lot of, we have no interest in proving Bigfoot's real. We all know Bigfoot's real. What we're trying.
What were the events that led up to this incident?
We came down the road and turned around like usual, and we go very slow down the end of the road. As we come down this road, probably at about 150 yards, maybe a little more out in the woods, I could see something moving. I didn't know what it was, and we went past a few trees and I asked the boy, "What in the hell is that?" He couldn't see it, and I drove ahead about another 5 feet. Stopped the truck and you could see a form coming. I call it a Sasquatch. It kept coming. I said, "Look at that." He said, "What is that?" Well, I don't know what the hell it is, and I don't even have my camera. Then he said, "You do too have a camera. You've got your cell phone." So I took the phone out and handed it to him. By the time he got the phone working, that was when picture 1 was taken, and then it turned to its left.
Was it aware of you at that point?
It didn't act like it cared if we were there or not, other than it did turn. It was getting brushier between us and it turned, then went into an opening. It came into the opening, and then at one point it stopped and turned its head, looking right at us.
Did it turn its head or whole body?
Well, the whole shoulder part, the front portion. It lifted its left shoulder back and twisted and looked at us. Then it just went right back into the angle it was. At that point, well, the whole shoulder part, the front portion, it lifted its left shoulder back and twisted and looked at us. Then it just went right back into the angle it was.
When it looked at you, what was the expression on its face? Could you see any of that?
I don't know. It just looked at us. You know, deer in the headlights type of look.
Did it look surprised?
Did it look more like the same as we were? What are you? What the heck are you doing here? I was just looking at the size of it because it was huge. I kept asking him, "Did you get a picture? You know, did you get a picture?" Then it just turned back into the angle it was originally going. Then it picked up its stride. It moved a little faster, probably half again as fast as it was going. Then he, the witness's son, got out of the truck. The boy did. Then it paused like it was going to turn again and look at us, but it didn't. It just turned. I don't know if it went around something or what, and he got one more picture. Then it came on the road and he couldn't get one more picture before he left. I don't know. It looked surprised.
So it cut across a logging road?
The road runs through there.
And you lost it once it went across?
It stepped right on the road, and I don't think it made 2 steps. The first step, and then it was standing. Stopped right there, and it looked right at us. It was standing more upright. The next step, it went into heavy brush. Just a deer trail or a little path. The brush just closed in around it. I pulled forward, and there is another little road that goes down along the way it went, and we never did see it again.
You said it crossed the road. How many steps did it take to cross the road?
1, 2, it was across because it just stepped in the road and stepped off it. It's a narrow road. It's just a regular Ford pickup, so it's the width of the pickup. Brush rubs both sides of the truck, so 8 or 9 feet. Like when deer will jump, hit the road once when they are running. It had the same stride as a deer would running. You know, jumping through the woods.
Was there a trail on either side of the road?
I didn't notice a trail where it came from as much as I noticed a trail from where it went. You know where it came from was bracken, fern, and salal brush. It's up there above my waist. Back here where it came, turned originally in the opening. There was water even then. Probably it's a low spot, kind of where it came through, probably a foot deep or 2 feet deep from the rains.
So would you estimate about 48 inches tall for the fern and the salal?
About that tall. Then it goes in stages, but your base layer is at least that high.
So what we are seeing in these pictures is...
Oh, his butt was above the brush, its chest height on me.
The witness is 6 feet tall. From that picture, it appears the figure is down on all fours.
Don't think so. I don't think the hands were on the ground.
You don't think it's walking with its knuckles?
Everything else moved, but the arms didn't. They were just kind of there.
So you didn't see any big arm movement, like when a gorilla walks quadrupedally?
I didn't see the arms moving at all.
So it is walking hunched over but not down on all fours?
I didn't notice it being down on all fours.
Just looking at the angle the torso is in, leaning quite far forward, it would be very difficult to walk in that manner without falling over.
I said it's not like he's crawling over logs or windfalls or anything either. He appears to be more hunched over in certain pictures than when he was walking towards us, but he was still hunched over coming towards us. I noticed as he was coming towards us that he walked from side to side.
He waddled?
Yeah, he swayed or something. Like every step, he would really make a big step. You know, like a little kid being proud or something? But I know, well, you just need better pictures. You need to be there.
You needed your video camera.
Okay, so I've interviewed Rich Xumo, and we've been down at the Cliff Canal site, which is, it's a little ways from what you're talking about.
We found some around here.
Is that, do you think that's the same, you think it's the same plane, you think it's
No.
the same?
I
I knew what I was about to look up and see right in front of me, and it was like I just stopped and I started to lift my head up, and I was wearing a red hat. Directly ahead of me, not over here where I'm hearing stuff, but right in front of me, I hear this huge exhale, groan, moan, kind of like in complete disgust is the feeling that I got from it. Like this thing is just disgusted in me and just sick of me and wanting to scare the living shit out of me.
At the time of this sighting, I was homeless and living in my station wagon. I always took showers at a campground on Harstein Island. At about 11:30 p.m., I was traveling north on the island and was doing the speed limit and watching out for deer in the road, because there are a lot of them on the island. I was coming up to the Grange Hall turn, where there is a connecting road that travels south on the eastern side of the island. There is a hill at the point of the intersection, and I slowed down to the recommended speed because there is a hairpin turn just down the other side. As my lights came over the top of the hill, I could see into the large pasture next to the road where it turned left. It was a clear fall night, and the moon was out so I could see very good. I noticed something standing in the field, couldn't remember seeing it before. I thought it was a tree stump at first, but there wasn't one there before. Then I thought about the horses that are usually there in the daytime, but it just wasn't it. I was slowing down to about 10 to 15. I could turn left when this thing turned its head and looked straight at me. I remember quickly slowing the car and almost came to a stop. As I rolled through the corner, it turned in the same direction and walked at the same speed I was rolling. It was absolutely huge. It wasn't very far from my car, maybe 40 feet. The field is about 3 to 4 feet below the road, and this thing towered over me, so I had to look over the top of the steering wheel to see it. I could smell it, and it burned my nose. My windows were up, but the heater was on. It took long strides and was actually moving faster than me, and I stopped the car because I thought it was going to come over the barbed wire fence into the road in front of me. It walked down the fence line, and I followed at a distance, but I could still see it very clearly. At the corner of the fence line, the road turns sharply to the right, and it just stepped over the fence with no trouble at all. I remember feeling scared to death, and the hair on my body was standing up.
And I was like, I got to a point where I just wanted to get the hell out of here before anything even happened. I kept hearing the twigs break.
Same plane, you think it's the same?
No, there are major waterways in between where we're doing our research when that happened. I do think that where Rich was researching, I was actually researching it with him for a number of years.
And on the brim of it, I just see this thing standing there. And before I get to the point where I got a totally clear view, the thing is starting to do this, and it goes down like this, but it's still facing me. And it's doing it all in one movement where it kind of squats, right? Puts its hands kind of on its knee area, and then it just kind of does this to the side until it's out of view, but it did it real freaking fast. So fast that...
I was out on the small lake fishing with a friend, and we heard something big running through the water by the shore. It was not a deer or elk, as it was running fast and heavy through the water. The ducks and heron in the water flew off, and then everything was dead silent. When we turned the boat around to go back to shore on the other side of the lake, I looked back into the inlet where we heard the running. I could make out something very big on 2 feet standing in the shadows of the trees. It was standing up, and it was swaying from side to side. I tried to watch it for a while before my friend made us go back. Also, my house is not far from the lake, and almost every night between 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., I hear this roaring sound that is not any animal I ever heard, and once in a while something answers back.
You know, from a tactical perspective, you're looking at this thing move, and the quickness and the agility that it had was otherworldly in itself too. The speed was just something that you couldn't comprehend, and it did it completely silent. Not a twig broke, not a noise at all. It just went, and this is a thick area to the left. Mm-hmm. And I immediately thought I was being flanked, because that's the direction of my vehicle, and I thought that I was dead.
They're constructed as opposable hub style, and the material for these nests was broken off bushes in the surrounding area, transported, and then crafted into what looked like giant birds' nests. So the only match that there is really are African gorilla beds. They are almost identical to African gorilla beds.
Whereas while they were here, they didn't seem to bother them at all, but they were just pissed that I was in here all the time. And they wanted to build up the event as big as possible to have the biggest effect on me.
Right.
You know, to ultimately, I believe, to change my behavior, to make me stop coming here.
Also, we went to a spot near Lake Cushman. And is that's the same area?
That is very close to the same area. Because he had sites going on both sides. He was on Harstein Island, and then, but yes, up where he was researching at Lake Cushman was probably only about...
They had 2 sightings. The original homeowners, they didn't know they were Bigfoots.
So what are we going to see now?
We're going down to the trading place.
Okay.
Where we used to leave all the, where I used to leave gifts. And the guy who reported this initially and brought me here, he took me to this spot because this is where he gifted at. And he was a musician too, and he used to play music here and have encounters down here. They had a fire pit there, and they used to actually invite people over to have Bigfoot encounters, their friends.
Huh.
And they would play music, have a fire, and they would hear the Bigfoots come down around here and just sit up in the bushes.
Wow.
And then they could see their eyes reflect off of the light of the fire. They hear them talking and everything, like their own language. And they used to hear them all the time in the creek down here, running up and down the creek at night when the water was low.
Wow.
It's really starting to rain.
It is starting to rain.
This is
Okay. And I suppose this is mountain behind us?
yeah, on down mountain right now. And then the backside of this mountain, I had another area that was part of the Ham area, which is the Canal State Forest, around Price's Lake. And I don't know if they're the same Bigfoots as here, but I suspect not. Different group. This is a group of 3. A male, female, and then a juvenile.
That should be enough to let Bigfoot know Encounters USA is in the house at Lake Cushman. So if Bigfoot's out there, why don't you come down and have some peanut butter? Well, I guess you'll just have peanut butter tonight. I forgot to get the apples. So come on down, Bigfoot, and let's have a party.
What I will tell you is later, you know, I did this head in the box to try to get pictures of him. I had a camera in a box with the mannequin head over the top. And over a few weeks, nothing happened. And finally, I propped the box open all the way with the head showing and the camera sitting next to the head. I came back a few days later. And from the side of the camera, which is up there at the little waterfall, going down for 200 yards plus, there was a kite string suspended above the water, right down the center of the creek, twisted around branches and stuff that were hanging, all the way to the base of the camera. And at the base of the camera, which is on the tree,
What I just heard a minute ago was the sound exactly of the baby Bigfoot from my Bigfoot app. So it's amazing that would sound just like that. And I wish it would do it again.
it's like they stole a whole roll of kite string and they used it. And see how the branches go out over the creek? Just the kite string would be wrapped around the tip of a branch to hold it in place, and it was suspended about 3 feet above the water. Yeah. Right down the center. Like, the way I took it was like, you don't cross this line. Another time I climbed the other side and I went up the ravine, and there's an old road up there, and it edges a big clear cut at the top of the ridge, and then it goes into a couple of bowls.
So I'm hearing some calls over there, and I can't really tell what they are. And anyway, they're weird. I recorded them, but it's probably an owl, I guess, but gave them some Bigfoot calls just in case. Tell them, come on down.
And I got right to the top of the ridge, and right across from me on the other side, I heard one dove sound like, whoo.
On Sunday, May 28th, 2023, at around 7 a.m., myself, my husband, and my brother went for a nature walk near his parents' property. We found an old logging road near the south end of the island in the center. Menka Lumber owns pretty much the entire center of the island, so it's all evergreen tree farmland. We stopped for a few minutes and took in the view. That is when we first heard the owls, which first there was just one coming from maybe a mile or so out into the new growth forest. At first I thought it was an owl, which was weird because it was a little late to hear an owl considering it was well into the morning and the sun was all the way up by this point. The whole time we were on the path, the owl sounds never stopped. They actually got louder and seemingly closer, and there were multiple of them. Then they were coming from both sides of the trail. It seemed like they were communicating with each other. My husband stopped us every few minutes to listen as we were continuing down the path. He noticed that the owl sounds weren't coming from above us, as if they were in the trees like an owl would do. They were coming from ground level. At one point we heard what sounded like muffled voices, as if someone were in the trees but had their mouth covered and couldn't speak, followed by very loud and low-pitched growl that was maybe 20 feet into the old growth forest near us.
And there's your answer.
There are people that think that there could be as many as, hundreds of Bigfoots in the Olympic National Forest. I think there's maybe 20.
And that was it.
Wow.
And doves don't usually hang out together alone like that and make one sound. So I think that likely they were alerting, their sentry or whatever was alerting that I was there.
I don't know how well you can hear that. Now they seem to have stopped, so crazy.
Except for me coming to check the camera, but whatever put the string there didn't trigger the camera, but it stood in front of it for a considerable amount of time.
All right, well, it's that time of the Bigfoot hunting trip where we get to put together our infrared illuminator and our Psionics Aurora Pro.
This is where I left all my gifts, right here. In fact, the only gifts that would get taken were the ones that weren't on the camera. I had a camera on that spot where I had gifts, and it was strange because the stuff would always be moved in front of the camera, but I could never figure out what was going on.
All right, so the next thing we need to do is we need to get our cameras ready to go, and so we'll just...
They never brought it back. Some other little things they ended up taking. I put a mirror here and stuck it in the moss facing them. Came back a few days later. The mirror was out of the ground facing down. I put a little rubber playground ball there with Hannah Montana on it. they took a stick and jammed it all the way through it and popped it. It was sitting right where I left it with a stick jammed all the way through it. And those are tough rubber ball walls. They poked it through all the way. And there are certain things they like. They took a Barbie doll, a small one. They kept it for 6 weeks, and then it came back the same spot, all weathered looking. They took a rainbow-colored Barbie horse that I left. They never brought it back. Until I started reviewing the pictures and see rocks would enter the frames and knock over the shit that was inside. I hung stuff from trees. I left food down here. They didn't never take any of my food. The guy who used to own this place used to give them food all the time, and they would take it from him.
Department of Natural Resources, and we started a mass search on anything in North America that builds ground nest.
But only certain things they would take, and they wouldn't take other stuff. They didn't like vegetables too much. They take apples, grapes, bananas. Well, the last thing that happened was the head in the box and the string.
That was 3.5 years ago. At this point, I'm quite sure that's what they are. But we've done our due diligence and taken this amount of time to rule every other possibility out. And with Bigfoot stuff, and people just assume, the nests are fascinating. In all the years I've been doing this, the nest that we're working on is the most fascinating thing that I've done.
But they told him about me and stuff that they were greatly offended by the head in the box.
Is that right?
And
we ruled basically everything out before we even started thinking, okay, these could possibly be Bigfoot beds.
They liked me at first and enjoyed my tenacity, but thought I was misguided about things. But they said that I had crossed the line with the head in the box. They thought it was insulting.
Yeah.
And so and it made a lot of sense to me that they would think that. I had one position that shot across this road into this thick young timber, and at 3 in the morning I got a picture of a tall dark figure coming out of the timber and going down the road, but he was way too far away to get any detail. It was just a shadow at 3 in the morning way back in the woods behind a locked gate that was tall.
Beliefs and my opinions are based on the last 35 years of research that I've personally done.
Walking bipedal. Wow. So potentially I think I got a picture of one there. And then down there as we came up, there's a hole in the side of the hill that goes up under a root. I had a camera up under there, and during the daytime, in the afternoon actually, something walked by and I got a picture of what looks like from here down in just this area of a big hairy calf muscle.
Wow.
Brown hair that didn't look like a bear or anything else.
So there we have one jar of peanut butter, and now let's try to find us a place to put our trail camera, and that looks like it right there.
At the base of the tree there was a rock place there about that big around, about 100-pound rock. Wow. And it was on the end of the string holding it there, and the string went that way for about, like I said, 250 to 300 yards.
All right, so now let's try to focus. Alright, so there she is, the trail camera. And off in the distance, somewhere over there, there it is, the Bigfoot goodies. Alright, left the cap a little bit screwed on, a little bit screwed off. Let's take a photo.
Indigenous in the Northwest here. That's in my opinion. I could be wrong. So I never say anything definitively as if I'm right and somebody else is wrong, but we are a scientific organization. Okay.
Anymore.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's the same thing as Harstein. I think they're setting boundaries.
Oh, maybe.
And they're saying, don't cross this. And you know, nothing against you, of course, but I think maybe there's some communication. Hey, this guy's not getting the message. Let's make a string. Let's make a line. They understand lines.
Well, it took that event to provoke that.
Yeah.
Right? They were interacting with me before that.
It's a trail cam, and hopefully it is armed and going. And I couldn't do it while I was holding this, but get one more shot of our bait. And now let's head back.
When we started researching these nests, we got 3 bear biologists. We got other biologists involved, people in fish and wildlife.
Because I used to take pantyhose, pull them over the cameras, and then I would cut slits for the lenses to go through, and then I would stick debris in the pantyhose because you can stick stuff in it, so you couldn't even see them. They knew where they were immediately, but they were throwing rocks at me the day I was putting them up. I was hanging down there, and small rocks were going pew, pew, and bouncing off the rocks and stuff around me. They weren't hitting me, so they obviously didn't intend to hit me, but they were throwing rocks at me the same day that I was setting them up, which was in the first couple weeks that I was coming here.
Bigfoot did this or Bigfoot did that. I'm not that guy. I'm the opposite of that guy. I assume something else did until the evidence slaps you in the face.
Yeah,
gives you no other.
I get that, but I say they're suspects.
I mean, yeah, there's a lot of them.
And
Shoot,
5 people, now 6 people. Well, it looks like our peanut butter has gone undisturbed for the night. Well, now you brought me here, so those Bigfoots are really going to be pissed off at you.
I don't know if they care anymore.
They'll be egging your house. So too has our trail cam. Probably on it right now. I'm not saying one would likely drown, but all of them males, all of them relatively healthy, and just disappeared. And then Jacob was found someplace where you say it was impossible for him to get to.
Well, not impossible, but improbable in my opinion.
So, all right, yeah, because I don't want to get into this because I know you guys are dedicated about science. So, does the prevalence of a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot creature in this area mean that a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot
or a couple of them had something to do with the disappearance of Gilbert Mark Gilman. Well, unfortunately, we can't say for sure about anything because realistically, we're still back where we started. We don't know if it was a serial killer like Israel Keyes. We don't know if it was Mark Gilman just disappearing himself to join a career in counterintelligence. We don't know if it was a random predator. And then finally, we don't know if it was a Sasquatch or a Bigfoot. But really, I mean, how do we find out for sure? Is there some way we could come up with a crystal ball or some kind of magic trick that would take us back in time to the disappearance of Gilbert Mark Gilman and let us know exactly what happened to him? Well, let me just give you a little for instance. In the 1970s, the intelligence agencies of the United States started looking into a phenomenon called remote viewing. And simply put, remote viewing uses the human mind to look at things, places, or events that happened in the past, present, or future that normally we would not have access to, like in other countries, for instance. What they call controlled remote viewing was actually very successful in identifying targets and what was at a given place at a given time. This method of remote viewing turned out to be so successful, they actually developed a particular form of it with steps and protocols and all different things. And now it is possible for us to use that same remote viewing technique to look back at what happened to Gilbert Mark Gilman. Now, if you're familiar with my Cascade Bigfoot documentary series, you'll know that after 2 documentaries, I still was no closer to finding out who put this mysterious blood in my tent when I was out Bigfoot calling. Well, in the 3rd episode, Cascade Bigfoot Blood Mystery Remote Viewed, I actually used remote viewers to come to a conclusion. What was so intriguing about it was that all the remote viewers came up with the same things. Now, if you want to know more about that, then check out Cascade Bigfoot Blood Mystery Remote Viewed. But for this case, I needed to find some remote viewers. So what I did is I put a simple ad basically online, and then I was given an opportunity by people who run these Facebook pages to actually go in and see if any of their remote viewers would be interested. After I got a select number of remote viewers, I said, okay, let's go ahead and let's start the project. And so based on the idea that I'm looking for who or what was responsible for the disappearance of Mark Gilman and what made Gilbert Mark Gilman disappear on June 24th, 2006. Based on this, I went into the controlled remote viewing protocols and I got myself a randomly generated number based on my questions. I assigned the randomly generated number to each remote viewer separately and with no communication between them before remote viewing the target. More simply put, the only knowledge the remote viewers had of the target was the randomly generated number and letter sequence 7 Alpha, 2 Delta, 88 Bravo Alpha. Once the remote viewer had the number, they could begin their work. Once the remote viewers had their number, after a few days, their first results came back. And sadly, according to my remote viewer Carl, his results were not good.
I viewed this over 2 days. Let me know what you think. Carl.
However, after I did some initial probing, I found out his results were actually astonishing. Hi, Carl. That is perfect. Can you send what you have? I will send a link to Dropbox or Google Docs in a bit. Carl was able to roughly draw the location so that it could have been used as a map of the area if it were necessary. Hi, Carl. This is fantastic. Can you tell me anything about the brothers and the cave? You got the location and description perfectly. As we shall see, Carl was able to identify a volcano or a large mountain, a large body of water, a cave, and a rainforest with a mild climate. Furthermore, in our initial contact, I keyed in on two individuals he described as brothers. Could they be the who or what that caused the disappearance of Gilbert Mark Gilman? And what about the cave? Was it really a cave? Or was it an orb or a portal to something else?
The brothers could be human, deer, moose, or anything that is flesh and blood. The cave I'm not sure of could be a hiding place, of a home to something, or just a hole in the mountain. The small village, I'm not sure how many houses, but one is on fire, and the village seems abandoned, no one lives there. The fire happened some time ago. Sorry, that's all I have to this point.
Could the cave be a portal? Could the brothers look like this?
Carl. Yes, the cave could be a portal. I never got a sense what the brothers looked like. They could look like that. All I'm certain of that they are flesh and blood, Carl.
It was just before I went on the air with Carl that I had my first real indication that I might be on the right track when it came to what happened to Gilbert Gilman. Earlier, when I had begun my search for remote viewers, I started on a social media remote viewing page. I started off by contacting the host of the page, who was in South Africa. I explained to her the gist of my project. After some questions, she agreed to let me post on her page, while at the same time she expressed interest in the project, at least until she quoted me price for remote viewing the target. It was then I found out that remote viewing isn't cheap. Later, after the target had been assigned to my team, I offered the target number to her just to expand my sample. According to her next message, she didn't remote view it, but she sent this message on social media after they had shown up in her dreams.
Jurassic monsters the size of skyscrapers chased me through jungles all night long, me angrily screaming at you in my dreams. How can you have viewers view this? Have them view life forms which live between dimensions. This is real. It harms. Wake up. Is the bogeyman stuff that attaches to anything any chamfey it gets, so it can be enabled to do things at the cost of the host that enables it? Lower vibing fabric of the universe stuff. Formless stuff the likes of tulpas or demons or jinns. Viewing such causes big harm is parasitic. Yes, I am talking about the target you sent.
Naturally, I thought it a bit melodramatic, considering the fact she hadn't actually remote viewed the target, but it did start to give me an indication I might be on the right track. In addition to this remote viewer, I began a conversation with another remote viewer in the Midwestern U.S. who began getting other indications of a massive movement in the mountains, possibly involved time or shifting dimensions.
Outside waiting, watching, feel they exist on the land. Neanderthals? Ground is unsteady and they are nervous but don't react. Dome-shaped metal. Shiny, V-shape. Movement not always seen. Feel everything moves with it. His body will never be found. It's all over the place. I've only seen blood like 2 times. If anywhere, I would look to the left and down the mountain not far from the Indian man-made thing.
Back when I started the project, I had only a slight suspicion as to who or what may have caused the disappearance of Gilbert Gilman and possibly others in the Olympic Mountains of Washington State. When these initial results began coming back, I started to realize I was on to something a lot more involved, possibly a lot more out of this world than I had originally suspected. But that was just the beginning. I still had 2 more remote viewers looking at the target, and their results were no less interesting and eye-opening. This is a debrief of Carl Peterson. Carl remote viewed a target. What were your overall impressions of the target?
The impression I got, I thought it would be maybe in the northern area of like in the Arctic, I thought, or maybe it was cold. I felt cold, but that could be just dampness. I felt dampness too, so that could be, like a rainforest or something like that. But other than that, I was interested in what was coming to my mind, and it flowed pretty good there for a while. Then it shut down. It took me a while to get into it. If you'll notice on page 1, there's 3 little squiggly lines up in the top left. And I start out by doing a squiggle line, and then I was getting nothing, so I put the pen down and I leave it alone for 20 minutes to a half hour and then come back to it. And I had to do that 3 times before I got the word burnt, and then it just started flowing from there.
Northern, you thought Arctic Place, which was, very close. You were in the mountains near Lake Cushman. What feelings or emotions did you feel anything?
What my feeling was, as I mentioned earlier, I felt cold and damp.
Did you feel cold and damp, or was the target cold and damp?
Well, I felt it, but I believe it was coming from the target.
Okay. So let's talk about the cave and the brothers. The cave first. What are the impressions you got about the cave?
Nothing much more than just a cave.
Did you go in?
No, I never went in the cave, no.
Why not?
I guess I'd be quite honest, I never thought of it. I should have, I guess, if I could. But I never thought of it because I was kind of then focusing on the brothers.
Right.
Trying to identify what they were. The pine trees or fir trees.
Okay.
I could smell that. I had no taste at all.
Okay.
But I felt some heat once in a while. Like you'd get maybe heat from a campfire for a short period of time. And all I could identify was they definitely were brothers. That was very clear. And they weren't small. They were on the large size. Like it wouldn't be a squirrel or a chipmunk. It would either be a large moose or a large bear or heck, maybe as a Bigfoot. I have no idea.
try to use different colors to kind of help map it, because it's going to be hard. So the ale orb, it's unexpected. Not identified. Why orb? It's red, orange. Like a light.
Luminous orbs, like luminous spheres of light or something. You know, when this data point came up, this current entity, the first thing that came to mind were these luminescent orbs.
I feel like this is north. This would be west. South, and then east. Very well. Kayak. Very well. Stairs. Why stairs? Point of entry.
But I'm getting this canopy, like the forest floor or something.
It was cold. I felt cold, but that could be just dampness. I felt dampness too, so that could be, like a rainforest or something like that.
So it's a secluded area.
Okay, I'm getting a selected area of space, and I don't, and not like outer space, but almost like a plot of land or something. It almost feels like it's the land of, these are supposed to be like trees. I know it's bad, but I was going with that. It's getting like an area with a lot of precipitation.
What size of body, did you have any idea what size of body that was, or body of water that was?
No, but it sensed an ocean.
Okay.
But I wasn't positive about that. I sensed it was an ocean.
Okay. But a larger body of water.
That's right, yeah.
AOL. Lake. Pool. It's liquid. There's a stream. Weeks. Stream. From direction. Top to bottom. North. So we got something like some liquid on the ground.
Dome-shaped metal, shiny, V-shape, movement not always seen, feel everything moves with it.
This reminds me of like a searchlight. I see this light beaming down over the canopy or something, and it's almost like it feels like a search tool or something, someone.
Outside waiting, watching, feel they exist on the land. Neanderthals?
I get a deceptive nature. But okay, it feels like my subconscious just surprised me here. Wow, okay. It's almost, to me, it's almost as if this guy maybe just stepped off of this thing. This is interesting. Okay. Yeah, like I was just about to probe his mind, like, why are you doing this? And I got a sense of to scare them.
Like in complete disgust is the feeling that I got from it. Like this thing is just disgusted in me and just sick of me and wanting to scare the living shit out of me.
Sentient species. Does not like to be photographed. Far from home. You know, if this is what I can only deduct a Sasquatch, right? It's hard not to at this point, but it's either that or I'm completely off base. And I'm getting a sense of shock and awe, but I'm also getting kind of a feeling of terrorizing. Yeah, I feel like I'm like kind of thinking of probes to prompt this guy, and it's almost like he's answering me before I could even finish the sentence. But because my kind of what popped in what I was thinking was kind of like, how do you feel about us? And my sense was, and I've been getting this kind of over and over, is just the invasive quality.
Act on me,
right?
You know, to ultimately, I believe to change my behavior, to make me stop coming here.
And I just got kind of a concept of this nature versus nurture. This guy's calling out. I don't know. Almost reminds me of a coyote or something. Like some weird noise. Like calling out to his ancestors. Yeah, and again, I get a sense of character assassinations. Like I wonder if somebody saw this thing and like
they all see something. They all see something.
Maybe people are questioning it.
This captures it. AOL. Something in the water too. I don't know. Captures maybe the light.
Persistence and anger. Heartfelt trauma. Yeah, I get this deep sense of loss. It's almost like he's losing his home.
Focused on the water. On the rocks.
And I get a sense of home field advantage for someone. I got a sense of not by chance.
I see one's in the water. In water. See 2 camera. See 3. He's pointing and looking at something. And they all kind of see and hear the same thing. I feel like it's a point of view, more like a concept of a point of view. Okay, we'll go to the next one. There's a hard object here. Perhaps a camera. This person is like standing in it. This person's like watching. And this person is interacting with him, but watching. And watching.
The first perception is like of these guys almost like they're erecting, it reminds me of like erecting a fence or something. I've got the structure in the background and I've got this natural area. So I'm getting this almost as if they're like building up structures in the area, perhaps. Act of kindness in human history or something. Okay, so that's basically kind of what I got. And it feels like this thing, it's like, to me it feels like you almost stepped off of this thing. I don't know. Gosh, it's almost like maybe he's talking to someone here. A couple people, possibly. I just get a natural observer and this direction of containment. And it's almost feels like tree, natural surroundings, but okay. Okay, you get an exchange. Urban formation? Causal. I just heard screaming. Act. Retaliation. Okay, I got the sense this relates to a chance encounter. You know, I get this face to face. I had this often in this session where I just got the sense it's almost like I was taking up the position of someone and I was like walking through the woods or lurking through the woods. Yeah, it's almost this guy's like tiptoeing through the trees. My sense is he's looking down on this property. Okay, so he's like at a distance, possibly from like a big tree or something. And it's like he's very curious. About this property. I don't know if this is gated or what, but it feels relatively like foresty around here. So he sees this property in the distance. Like I was just about to probe his mind, like, why are you doing this? And I got a sense of to scare them.
Gil was spotted by a park ranger, Sanny Lustig, carrying a camera but not a backpack on June 24, 2006. Sanny said, "I could actually hear the music playing in his car, so I went out to see what was going on. I had a brief conversation with him and asked him to turn down the music. I got the sense he was going for a hike."
Formulating a plan just came to mind. Discarnate entity. Discretionary. Just came across, I don't get it, but it's probably an AOL, I get prisoner of exchange, but I don't know, this feels maybe more related to this, that kind of, and then this may be kind of a separate kind of a thing, but again, this big guy came off of this craft, so I don't know if this has some working relationship with this craft or what, but I could be wrong. My sense was the orb and the creature and the craft above the property were one and the same. The ET is either like astral traveling, helping triangulate where this guy is, or keeping surveillance on the property. Or it's literally some kind of scout from the ship that's some kind of crazy advanced scout. It's not like they have drones like us. I mean, their stuff is unrecognizable.
So there you have it. The results of my last 2 remote viewers. Now all we have to do is to decide whether the prevalence of a Bigfoot or Sasquatch type creature in their remote viewing sessions is an indication that that is what happened to Gilbert Gilman according to the task that they were assigned. In the case of each remote viewer, the location was described accurately. So too was the description of water, mountains, and trees. The question is, does the accuracy of their description of the location also indicate accuracy when describing the ultimate fate of Gilbert Gilman? It is uncanny that every remote viewer, with the exception of Kyle or remote viewer 2, did describe a Bigfoot-type creature, while Kyle, remote viewer 2, described 3 individuals, 2 of whom seemed to be in cahoots, exactly as the brothers that were described by remote viewer 1, Carl. Okay, so when we go a little bit farther into our remote viewing sessions with remote viewer 2 and remote viewer 3, we start to get more detail. Remote viewer 2 told us that there are 3 individuals, 2 of whom are in cahoots.
Interacting with him, but watching.
Remote viewer 1, Carl, the Canadian policeman, said there are 2 creatures, and he's not sure what they are, but they could be Bigfoot.
Large bear or heck, maybe as a Bigfoot. I have no idea.
And then finally, remote viewer 3 says that this is definitely a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch creature. But it goes farther than this, because almost every remote viewer came up with an orb.
Every remote viewer came up with water, came up with the landscape, came up with the mountains, came up with everything you're looking at right here. So does that indicate that their assumption, for some reason or other, Gilbert Mark Gilman was in a place where he should not have been, and he met somebody or some things that did not want to meet him? And according to Remote Viewer 3, Gilbert Mark Gilman ended up screaming.
I just heard screaming.
And according to one of the first remote viewers, Mark Gilman's body is somewhere up there in those mountains.
His body will never be found. It's all over the place. I've only seen blood like 2 times. If anywhere, I would look to the left and down the mountain not far from the Indian man-made thing.
So, is that what really happened to Gilbert Mark Gilman? Well, it's really up to you to decide, because lacking any actual physical evidence, the only thing that we have to go on is the fact that 5+ remote viewers came back with the same terrain, the same location.
It almost feels like it's the land of, these are supposed to be like trees. I know it's bad, but...
Why stairs?
The same weather, the same water, the same everything. And they all came back with something that denotes that Gilbert Mark Gilman met a grisly fate, or a fate that has nothing to do with anything that we know about in this world, at least. So, come to your own conclusions, because at Encounters USA, that's what we want you to do. And that's why we always say at Encounters USA, if you're out here in the Olympic Mountains near the Staircase Trail, always keep your eyes open and always watch your back.